She said I was in the way, that my presence ruined the aesthetic of her new home. And just like that, without hesitation, I was pushed out of my daughter's life. My name is Grace Thornton, and if you've made it this far, please stay. Because this story isn't just about rejection. It's about rebuilding, about how a woman can be broken in silence and still bloom. That morning, the sky over Greenville was thick with clouds, and the wind cut like a blade. I had prepared a basket with cornbread and apple pie, my daughter Chloe's favorites, just like I did every year for her birthday. It was our tradition, even after she got married. But when I arrived, the door barely opened. She looked different. Straightened hair, not a curl in sight, heavy makeup, a forced smile, and behind her, a cold, pristine living room filled with expensive decor and photos where I no longer appeared. "Mom," she said, adjusting her blazer like she was shielding herself from a threat. "We didn't plan this. You can't just show up unannounced." "Chloe, sweetheart, it's your birthday. I always come," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But my hands trembled around the basket. Then I heard it, the sentence that still echoes through my bones. "You're out of place. Everything here is neat, clean, beautiful. And you show up in those farm clothes with your homemade stuff? It just doesn't fit our life anymore." A heavy silence fell between us. In the background, her husband Jason shot me a smug look, like he'd been waiting for this moment. "Chloe, I'm your mother. Doesn't that still matter? I don't have time for this today, okay? Please, just go." She closed the door with a softness that cut sharper than a slap. And I just stood there, on her front step, alone, holding that warm basket that suddenly meant nothing at all. I smelled the apple pie mixing with the cold, artificial scent of her home. Everything so different from what once felt like family. Across the street, a neighbor watched from behind her curtain. I lowered my head and walked slowly away, eyes blurred, heart hollow. I didn't cry. Not then. I tucked it all inside, like I always did. But something cracked in me. And maybe that's what I needed to finally break free. Because sometimes the pain that shatters us is the same one that pushes us to begin again. If this story has already touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and keep walking with me. What comes next isn't just about survival. It's about rebirth. Leaving a daughter behind hurts. But what hurts more is realizing you were never part of the life she wanted to build. I came home without even taking off my boots. The dusty soles scraped across the old hardwood floor of the house I'd lived in for nearly 30 years. I hung the untouched basket on the kitchen doorknob. I couldn't even look at it. The smell of apple pie filled the room and turned my stomach. I reached for the wool coat draped over the porch chair, the one my mother knit years ago before she passed. That coat had witnessed all my silences, and as I put it on, it felt like dressing for a goodbye. I turned on the old kitchen radio, hoping the familiar hum of country music would comfort me. But it only cracked me open. I sat on the floor, legs crossed, and cried harder than I had since Frank's funeral. Back then, Chloe still held my hand. Today, she could barely meet my eyes. "Where did I go wrong?" I whispered into the room. The walls didn't answer. I stayed there for hours. The living room clock read 5 p.m. when the phone rang. I let it ring. I didn't want to hear anyone's voice. Not even hers, especially not hers. That night, I left the porch light on, as if deep down, I hoped Chloe might change her mind, might come knocking, asking for forgiveness. But morning came, and nothing changed. Not the door, not the ache in my chest. It wasn't until the next day, while I was folding linens out on the clothesline, that I heard my neighbor, Mrs. Brenner, calling across the hedge. "Grace, I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. But maybe it's time you thought about yourself. Sell the place, travel, live a little." I smiled politely, but her words stayed with me, tapping gently, then louder. What if she was right? That same afternoon, I opened the old drawer in my writing desk and pulled out an envelope where I'd tucked away clippings of places I'd always dreamed of visiting. A cozy inn in Vermont, nestled among pine trees. a seaside cafe in Savannah, a used bookstore in Flagstaff, with tea tables and wide sunlit windows. I exhaled deeply. Maybe at 64, I could start something new, something just mine, without Chloe, without the weight of what should have been. I turned on the computer for the first time in weeks and began searching for small towns, places with a low cost of living and quiet corners where silence still lingered. That's when I found Blue Ridge Falls, a town barely visible on the map. Simple homes, a small population. And one listing: local cafe seeking mature female assistant, housing included. My heart skipped. It wasn't a grand new beginning, but it was a beginning. I closed the browser, leaned back in my chair, and shut my eyes. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt light. Maybe this was what God had been trying to show me all along. Maybe the pain of being forgotten was just the nudge I needed to finally remember myself. The road was long, but for the first time, I wasn't running from anything. I was heading toward myself. 2 days later, my car was packed with only the essentials: clothes, my old radio, a few notebooks with recipes, and a photo of my mother at her sewing machine. A quiet reminder of what it means to be strong in silence. I closed my front door slowly. The wood creaked, as if it too was saying goodbye. I didn't leave a note, didn't tell anyone. I simply left the pie on the kitchen table, still in its basket, with a napkin embroidered with Chloe's initials. Maybe one day she'd come back, or maybe she wouldn't. The roads through North Carolina felt endless. The radio played softly as the scenery changed. Farmland, open fields, old wooden houses. There was a strange peace in that kind of solitude. When I finally reached Blue Ridge Falls, the clock on the dashboard read just past 6 p.m. The sun dipped behind the hills, painting everything in a soft, golden hue. I parked in front of a simple white wooden building with flower boxes under the windows and a modest sign that read, "The Hearth Cafe." Inside, a woman with short hair and oversized glasses was washing dishes, humming to herself. When she saw me, she wiped her hands on her apron and hurried to the door. "You must be Grace? I'm so glad you're here. I'm Margot." The way she said my name, soft, familiar, stirred something in me. It had been so long since anyone spoke my name with kindness. "Just Grace is fine," I replied, smiling with a mix of nerves and relief. Margot showed me the small room in the back of the cafe, an iron bed, a crocheted quilt, and a window with yellow curtains. Simple, but welcoming. The room smelled of lavender and fresh coffee. "Tomorrow starts early," she said. "The older folks here like to come in at 6 sharp. But don't worry, no one's in a hurry around here. We live slow. I hope you'll like that." "That's exactly what I need," I replied, sitting on the bed and feeling, just for a moment, the weight of the world begin to lift. That night, I didn't cry. I simply listened to the silence, a silence full of meaning. I picked up a notebook and wrote, "I didn't come here to run away. I came to find myself, and maybe there's still time." I missed my daughter, of course, but not the way she treated me. I missed the little girl who once ran barefoot through open fields, not the cold woman who looked at me like I didn't belong. And there, in that small room, for the first time in a long time, I felt light. Not every new beginning comes with applause. Sometimes it comes with dirty dishes, sore hands, and coffee that needs brewing before the sun even rises. My first day at the Hearth Cafe began at 5:20 a.m. Margot was already up, hair in a messy bun, and her apron tied tight around her waist. The kitchen smelled of fresh bread and strong coffee. And me, I was strangely excited. "Would you mind handling the sweets today?" she asked, handing me a floral apron that fit a little snugly around the middle. "If they turn out terrible, just tell folks it came from the other cafe down the street," I joked, making her laugh out loud. The flow of customers was steady, but warm. Simple folks. Neighbors who knew each other by name. A man in a straw hat ordered black coffee and asked if we could change the music to gospel. A young pregnant woman teared up after tasting my gingerbread loaf. "This reminds me of my grandma," she said, dabbing at her eyes. A lump rose in my throat, because that's exactly how I'd want to be remembered. By noon, my hands were red, my feet were sore, and my apron was speckled with flour and jam. But my heart felt alive, more alive than it had in years. During our break, Margot sat next to me, cracking open 2 sodas and handing me one with a quiet gesture. "You're good at this, you know," she said. "You've got hands that warm people. That's something you can't teach." Maybe it's because I've spent my whole life trying to care for everyone else. "And forgot about myself," I said. She looked at me in that way people do when they understand without needing all the details. "This place," she said, motioning to the cafe, the people, the view outside the window, saved me after my husband left. I stayed here baking bread and listening to stories from folks who'd been left behind too. "And now it's me," I said softly. "The next story." Margot smiled. "No one's an old story here, Grace. Here, we're all a new chapter." That afternoon, after closing up, I walked around town. It looked like something from a storybook. Kids riding bikes, an old woman feeding birds, a dog napping on the sidewalk. Everything so calm, so far from the coldness I left behind in Greenville. Back in my room, I slipped off my shoes and laid down with my feet up. I reached for my notebook and wrote, "Today, someone said my name kindly. Someone complimented the flavor of my cake. And someone sat next to me just to share the moment, expecting nothing in return. It may seem like nothing to the world, but to me, it was everything. And there, alone, with the kettle whistling softly in the background and the scent of lavender drifting from the curtains, I understood something. You don't have to become who you once were. You can become someone entirely new, even after 60. She wrote to me on my birthday, 3 lines, not a single mom. Time in Blue Ridge Falls moved slowly. The days were simple, filled with small tasks, wiping tables, baking bread, listening to the town's stories. At night, I'd sit by the window with a cup of tea and let the silence rock me gently to sleep. It was during one of those quiet evenings that I got the message. Chloe. Her name lit up on my phone screen, and my heart jumped in a way it hadn't. Not even when Frank proposed. With trembling hands, I opened the message. "Hi. Just wanted to let you know we sold the house. We're moving to Seattle. Good luck with your new life." That was it. No, "Mom, how are you?" No, "I miss you." Just that. Quick, clinical, cold. I stared at the screen for minutes, waiting, hoping for more to follow. But her silence said more than any words could have. I tucked the phone into the drawer and stepped out of my room, trying to keep the ache in my chest from becoming a wildfire. "Grace?" Margot called from the kitchen. "Everything all right?" I nodded but couldn't speak. I sat down beside her and began peeling apples, as if the motion of my hands might mend what was beyond repair. She watched me for a few quiet seconds, then said softly, "You know, sometimes people love the only way they know how, and sometimes they just can't." It was the first time in a long while I cried in front of someone. "She's my daughter," I whispered between sobs, "and I don't understand what I did that was so wrong." Margot wrapped her arms around me with a quiet strength. "Maybe you didn't do anything. Maybe she just became someone you couldn't have seen coming." That night, I went back to my notebook and wrote, "There's no pain more silent than loving someone who chooses to forget you, but there's power in continuing to love them anyway." I reached into an old envelope where I kept the letters Chloe wrote to me as a child. One of them read, "Mommy, when I grow up, I'm going to build us a house just for the 2 of us, with a swing in the yard and cake every Sunday." I traced her tiny handwriting with my fingers, trying to remember the little girl she once was. Not the woman who shut me out on her birthday, but the child who once called me her best friend. I closed the envelope gently. I didn't throw it away. I couldn't. But I placed it in the back of the drawer, where old hurts could still exist, but no longer hold power over me. Because in that moment, I realized something. Her absence no longer paralyzed me. It simply reminded me how much I had survived. And surviving was enough. It's cruel when a daughter chooses to forget, but even crueler when your love refuses to forget with her. Night fell over Blue Ridge Falls like a heavy blanket. The town slept peacefully, but inside me, everything was screaming. I sat at the edge of the bed, hugging a pillow to my chest like it could somehow carry the weight I was holding. The phone sat there on the dresser, screen lit up, cold, indifferent. Good luck with your new life. Such short words, so sharp, as if my existence were nothing more than a courtesy update. The pain didn't arrive with sobs. It came in the kind of silence that strangles from the inside out. My hands trembled. My eyes stayed dry, but they burned from within. There was pressure in my chest. Something inside had cracked again, only deeper this time. I got up, wandering the room like a ghost. I opened the closet and pulled down a small wooden box. Inside were old letters from Chloe, a lock of her baby hair, and crayon drawings I had kept like pieces of my heart. One of the drawings showed a little house with flowers and the two of us holding hands. On top, in crooked handwriting, she had written, "I love you, Mommy, forever." I dropped to my knees on the floor, and there I allowed the pain to pass through me. The pain of once being everything to someone, and now being nothing. I remembered when she had a high fever at age 4. I stayed awake 3 nights in a row, checking her temperature every hour, singing softly even when I had no voice, sleeping upright with her in my arms. I remembered when she fell off her bike and scraped her knee. I sat on the curb, cradled her in my lap, blew gently on the wound, and whispered, "It's going to be okay, baby. Mommy's here. I'll always be here." And now, where was she? I rose from the floor slowly. I looked at myself in the mirror. Tired eyes, a worn face, a soul bruised. But I saw something else too. I saw a woman still standing, even broken, even forgotten. I tore a fresh sheet from my notebook and with a steady hand wrote, "I will no longer wait to be remembered in order to feel alive. I remember myself. I still belong to me, and that no one can take away." The next morning, I arrived at the cafe earlier than usual. I baked an apple cinnamon cake, the one only Chloe ever liked. I placed it on the counter with a small note beside it. For anyone who still believes that love, even when rejected, is a force that endures. Margot saw it, but didn't ask. She just wrapped her arms around my shoulders, her eyes glassy with emotion. And in that quiet gesture, I understood. Not every pain needs an answer. Some just need to be seen. She forgot me, but I finally remembered who I am. Weeks went by, and the pain settled like dust in the corners of the cafe. Still there, but no longer suffocating. It became something I learned to live with, like a scar that never fades, but no longer hurts when touched. I started allowing myself to smile again. First, it was with Mr. Edwin, an elderly regular who grumbled about the price of coffee every Friday, but always left a generous tip hidden beneath his saucer. Then it was with little Ava, a freckled girl who drew a picture of me with butterfly wings and said I smelled like happy cake. The truth was, I was relearning how to be happy. Through small things, the smell of batter rising in the oven, the gentle chime of the front doorbell, the quiet, grateful glances from customers who didn't need to say anything. And then there was Elliot, the town handyman, widowed for nearly a decade. Every week, he brought wildflowers wrapped in newspaper, saying they were just to brighten up the counter. One day, he came in earlier than usual, arms full of sunflowers, his smile slightly shy. "Thought these suited you today, Grace. You've been lighting this place up." I was speechless. My hands got clammy. My heart thumped like it hadn't in years, and a warmth crept into my cheeks that had nothing to do with the oven. "Thank you, Elliot." I paused, throat tightening. I almost forgot what it felt like to be seen. He smiled with his eyes and said, "Maybe you just forgot that you still have time to bloom. Sometimes all we need is new soil." That line stayed with me, planted itself like a seed. And for the first time, when someone said something beautiful to me, I didn't think of Chloe. I thought of me. That evening, I walked up to the hill behind the cafe. sat in the grass barefoot and stared at the sky, scattered with stars. I thought about everything I had lost, everything that had been taken from me. And what remained? Me. Grace. Not the mother, not the wife, the woman, the soul, the survivor. I pulled out my notebook and wrote, "Starting over doesn't mean forgetting who you were. It means remembering, with grace, who you deserve to become." And there, with the breeze gently stirring my gray hair and the scent of damp earth rising from the ground, I finally understood. Chloe may have left me, but I will never leave myself again. It wasn't a happy ending. It was a new beginning. And this time, I was the main character. On the last Saturday of the month, the cafe was busier than usual. It was the town's fair, and Margot had put together a small display of old photos from Blue Ridge Falls. Among them, there was a black and white picture of a group of women standing in front of a stone oven, aprons stained, eyes full of life. They were the town's first bakers, she said proudly. Women who fed others when no one else had anything to give. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the photo like I could step into the frame and touch their strength. And I realized something. I was becoming part of something too. Something bigger than the pain that brought me here. Later, while I was washing my hands in the back sink, Margot approached quietly. "There's someone out front," she said gently. "Says she knows you." My heart stopped. I stepped out slowly, feeling the floor shift beneath my feet. And there, standing at the counter with a bouquet of simple daisies and a lost expression, was Chloe. She looked smaller than the version I had held in memory, thinner, tired, carrying a weight on her shoulders that even youth couldn't disguise. Our eyes met, and for a moment, nothing existed but the years of silence between us. "Mom," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I don't know where to start. I could have said so many things. You broke me. You erased me from your life. Why? But I didn't say any of them. Instead, I took a deep breath, walked toward her, and with trembling hands, placed mine over hers on the counter. 'Start from now,' she cried, like a child, like the daughter I once knew. And in that moment, even without promises of perfect reconciliation, even with the past still sore, something healed, not between us, but within me. That night I sat in my room with the last page of my notebook, blank and waiting. I picked up my pen and wrote slowly. Yes, I was forgotten, rejected, silenced, pushed aside, but I survived. I rebuilt myself with the same hands that once spent their days serving others, and now they serve me. Loneliness taught me the value of my own company. Pain taught me that dignity doesn't shout, it endures. And love, oh love, I learned it doesn't always come from where you expect. Sometimes it blooms inside you, and when that happens, you finally understand what it means to be alive and whole. The bedroom window was cracked open, and a soft breeze stirred the curtains. For the first time in a very long time, I fell asleep in peace. Not because I got back what I'd lost, but because I finally found what I had been missing: myself. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel. Here, we celebrate real lives, strong women, and quiet new beginnings that deserve to be told. Like, share, and always remember. Even if the world forgets you, you can still choose to remember yourself. You are not alone, and you never will be. Thank you for listening.